Thad Graham. I'm the education specialist for the Victim Services Program at Family Services. We're going to go ahead and talk about domestic violence beyond the bruises today. This is a continuation from last week's discussion where we looked at a history of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, as well as defined domestic violence, and talked a little bit more about dual advocates and how we work. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat below. I will happily stay after as long as we need to answer any and all questions. There are also 3 handouts that are available to you. They are the 3 power and control wheels that we will be talking about today. So those are available in the handouts for you as well. So, like I said, my name is Thad Graham. I work for FSI Victim Services Program. Our mission here is to provide resources to build healthier relationships and to promote personal growth. And our vision is to engage with the communities to meet the needs of their most vulnerable members. Objectives from today. We are going to redefine domestic violence. We are going to discuss a brief history of the power and control wheel. We are going to discuss the National Centers for Domestic and Sexual Violence's power and control wheel. We will look into it a little bit further, and we will discuss the different types of power and control wheels that were developed by survivors of domestic violence. So this is identical to what we talked about last time in defining domestic violence. What is domestic violence? Domestic violence is a pattern of coercive behavior that is used by one person to gain power and control over another intimate partner or familial relationship. Once again, we have to understand that domestic violence, intimate partner violence, is not what we see on TV. It is not the bruises. It's not a black and blue eye. It is someone gaining control over someone else through power and control, through coercive behaviors, through violence, but through other acts as well. Many terms are going to be used interchangeably to describe and discuss domestic violence. It may be referred to as abuse, domestic violence, battery, intimate partner violence, family, spousal, relationship, or dating violence. You may hear me use a bunch of different words. I am referring to someone gaining power and control over someone else. According to the CDC, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have experienced physical abuse from an abusive intimate partner. So 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men have reported to be abused in an intimate partner relationship. And that is, once again, only the numbers that are being reported. They could be higher. So when we look at characterizing domestic violence, it can be characterized by many types of abuse. Any or all of these types of violence or abuse may occur within a domestic violence situation. Once again, we have to remember that domestic violence and each situation is very different. Each person's experiences with abuse are going to be different from someone else's. There are characteristics that are the same, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes, but every person experiences it differently, whether it's emotional abuse, physical violence, stalking, sexual violence, financial abuse, verbal abuse, or other things that go along with gaining power and control over someone else. Just know that it is a very, very personal thing, and it will differ between each survivor. So the power and control wheel. A brief history. It was developed in 1984 by the staff at the Domestic Abuse Intervention Project, DAIP. So what they were looking for was a way to define what domestic violence looked like versus just that physical violence, that physical abuse, because they understood that it is more than just physical violence. It is more than physical abuse. It is more than that bruise, that black eye, that broken arm. It is much more than that. So what they did is they started to interview and talk to survivors of domestic violence and intimate partner violence. What they came up with was this wheel, and it was a common characteristics and common denominators that they found while speaking to and talking to different survivors. After interviewing and talking to and working with these different survivors, yes, everybody's experience was different, but there were a lot of similarities in how someone gained power and control over someone else. And that's how they developed and put this wheel together. The name actually comes from the fact that a batterer systematically uses threats, intimidation, coercion, as well as other tactics to instill fear in their partner to claim that power and control. As you'll see, power and control is at the center because it is all about gaining power and control over the other person. The violence, whether it's physical or sexual, the coercion, the emotional abuse, the financial abuse, everything else that goes with it is just about gaining that power and control over someone else. Now, you'll notice when we look at the wheel, it is not gender neutral, and that is on purpose. When they developed this wheel, they wanted to make sure that you understood that they were looking at specifically with this wheel men gaining power and control over women. When you look at their website, when you look at the information, they understand that men commit 86 to 97% of all criminal assaults, and that women are killed 3.5 times more often than men are in domestic homicides. They do understand that intimate partner violence can happen in same-sex as well as women being the perpetrator. But unfortunately, statistically, it is more likely that it is going to be a man who is going to try and abuse and gain power and control over a woman. That is what they wanted to bring attention to, and you will see that in this power and control wheel. Like I said, women can be the abuser, but oftentimes the context of that violence tends to differ than that from men. You'll see, like I said, once again, in the power and control wheel, it is focused specifically on men gaining power and control over a heterosexual relationship. Intimate partner violence in same-sex relationships does have many of the same characteristics as a heterosexual relationship. But that being said, it also happens within the context of a larger societal oppression of same-sex couples. You know, with a heterosexual couple, a wife does not have to worry about being outed to her parents. The husband doesn't have to be worried about being outed to his parents that he is, you know, part of the LGBTQ plus community. When we look at these same-sex couples and couples in the LGBTQ plus community, they have other concerns that are bigger and that are different than just a heterosexual couple. We will be talking more in depth about this next week. So I'm going to throw out a shameless plug. Next week, Webinar Wednesday, domestic violence in the LGBTQ plus community. That one is actually filling up rather quickly. So please make sure you are registered for it. If you're not, please let your friends know. That's going to be October 21st at 12:10 p.m. And we are going to have a special guest panelist, Brittany Cervello, our FSI Victim Services Helpline advocate, as well as our LGBTQ plus community expert, is going to be our guest panelist. And she is going to be sharing a lot of great information with us. I'm really excited for next week. Like I said, had to throw in a shameless plug. So there it is. So moving on, looking at our power and control wheel. And like I said, there are handouts that are available for you as well. All three power and control wheels are available in black and white for you to look at. So when we look at what domestic violence is, of course, we have the physical violence and sexual violence that encompasses everything. That is a looming threat to our victims, to our survivors constantly. But to gain that power and control, an abuser is not going to just use physical or sexual violence. They will use coercion and threats. So they're going to make and or carry out threats to do something to hurt her. They're threatening to leave. They're threatening to commit suicide or report them to welfare. They are forcing her to drop the charges, forcing her to drop that PFA or that CPO, or making her do illegal things so that they can hold that over her. They're also looking to use intimidation tactics. They want her to be afraid. If she is afraid, she is losing that power and control, making her afraid by using looks, actions, and gestures. You'll see this in smashing things, destroying her property, abusing pets, and displaying weapons. There will be emotional abuse. And often when you talk to survivors, this is the hardest thing to recover from. Often they'll say that the physical abuse, the bruises, the bones, the cuts, they heal. The emotional abuse lasts much longer. He will put her down. He will make her feel bad about herself. He will call her names, make her think she's crazy. He will play mind games. He will humiliate her and make her feel guilty. He wants her to feel and make it seem like it is her fault. If you would have just listened to me, if you would have just done what I said, if you would just do as you're told, I wouldn't have to hit you. I wouldn't have to hurt you if you just did as you're supposed to. You know that you have to have dinner on the table by 5. Why didn't you do that? If you would have just done that, you wouldn't have been hurt. It's your fault. They will use isolation. They're going to control what she does, who she sees, who she talks to, and who she spends time with. What she reads, where she goes, limiting her outside environment and using jealousy to justify his actions. You know I don't like it when you talk to other men. It makes me jealous. You know I don't like it when you go to your parents' house. I get jealous. They'll also use physical isolation, where they are moving her away from her friends and family, getting her to a place where she doesn't know anybody and can't make friends by keeping her isolated within the house. Minimizing, denying, and blaming, making light of the abuse and not taking her concerns seriously, saying the abuse didn't happen, that she's imagining things, and once again shifting responsibility for the abusive behavior to the victim, to that survivor, saying that she caused it, like the emotional abuse before. It's her fault. She knows what triggers him. She can not do it. And if she just listened, if she did as she was told, the abuse wouldn't happen. Using children, making her feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages, and using visitation to harass her, threatening to take away the children. We also see this in the legal system, where abusers will often use the courts and custody to continue to abuse the survivor even once they leave. Filing motion after motion, calling CYS, doing all they can to create a living hell for that survivor who finally decided to stand up for herself and to take power and control back. Economic abuse, preventing her from getting or keeping a job and making her ask for money, giving her an allowance, taking her money, not letting her know about or have access to family income. If she does not have the money to leave, the money to provide for herself, she has to go back. She can't leave if she can't provide for her children. She can't take the car isn't in her name. She has no money, she has no bank accounts. She's been isolated and she has no work skills that she can make money on her own. And lastly, male privilege, treating her like a servant, making all of the big decisions and acting like the master of the castle, being the one to define the men's and the women's roles. You'll see this, like I said before, when it comes to the example of dinner. You know, her role is to clean, cook, take care of the children, and to mind her own business. His role is to provide for the family, and he expects her to do as he says. If he wants dinner at 5, it better be there, and she better have it ready. If he wants to have sex tonight, she better, or he's going to sexually assault her anyways. Using that privilege and being the master of the castle, being the person that defines and sets those roles, allows him to keep power and control over her. Now, like I said, there are multiple different power and control wheels. You'll see the teen power and control wheel is similar, but it's slightly different, as it takes into account more of the teen dating and relationships, like peer pressure, social status, as well as sexual coercion. But you'll also see that it's similar when using intimidation, threats, minimizing, denying, or blaming, and using anger or emotional abuse. We will, in the future, look at teen dating violence more in depth, so look forward to that coming out as well. Like I said, there's also the LGBTQ plus power and control wheel that breaks down the power and control dynamic in a same-sex or LGBTQ plus relationship that we will be looking at further in the future and next week. So what I want to look at quickly is, we talked about this last week, victim services, how we provide 24-hour support and advocacy for domestic violence and sexual assault survivors. We have that 24-hour crisis helpline, and our advocates will respond 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But we have a major announcement that you may not have heard yet, and that is we now have a texting service. So FSI Victim Services now offers a texting option. It is free and confidential. It allows our survivors and victims to contact us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through that same helpline, but through text. Maybe it's unsafe to talk on the phone, but you know someone that wants to get help, that wants to start the process of safety planning and figuring out what options are available to them. They can text us now. So it's the same number as before, 814-944-3585, our helpline number, but now you can text it. Like I said, it is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our advocates are the ones that are answering the text messages. It's not a third-party service. It is the same person that would answer the phone if you called that advocate on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or our helpline advocate Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. It is us, it is in person, it is safe, it is confidential, and it is a great service that we are really excited to talk about and to promote. Please, like I said, make sure you write that number down. You may not need it, but your clients may, and it's a great option that they can text us. They can message us, they can text us, they don't have to call, they don't have to physically talk to us. And that is a great option that we are really excited to provide. Like I said, our helpline, 814-944-3585. You can text or call that number. Now, we still do have our 1-800 number, but our texting service does not work for the 1-800 number. You have to text the local 814-944-3585 for the texting service as well. If there are any questions, please feel free at this time to throw them in the chat. It is 12:32. I got started a few minutes late, so we are a few minutes over. If you have any questions at this time, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I will, like I said, stay as long as needed. I look forward to seeing you all next week to talk about the domestic violence in the LGBTQ plus communities. Make sure you pass on the word about our texting service. And if you have any questions, I'll hang out. There are 3 handouts as well: the power and control wheel, the LGBTQ plus power and control wheel, as well as the teen power and control wheel as well. I will send out the recording as soon as this is done, and thank you all for attending.